Kale had just convinced the plasma coupler to stop screaming when the station lights flickered, in a way that suggested either a minor power fluctuation or the prelude to a dramatic explosion. Since explosions on Theta-9 were usually announced by alarms shouting things like, "Please run," he assumed the former and went back to muttering encouragement at the console. Then he heard someone behind him whisper his name with the same energy one might use when addressing a haunted vent. He turned and saw a woman standing there, human-looking, except for the long ears that twitched like nervous antennae searching for a better universe. She looked too calm to be an intruder and too guilty to be friendly. Kale greeted her with the professional confidence of a man who once mistook a malfunctioning mop drone for a thief. She answered by blurting that she had made a terrible mistake, and that he, specifically, was involved. Kale demanded clarification, preferably the kind that didn't include the words cosmic rupture, but she only flinched and apologized, her ears drooping like wilted satellite dishes. He asked her name, and she replied Lurath, as if it were a confession. She added that she was an envoy on a diplomatic mission, and had, in a moment of questionable judgment, activated a beacon that was not meant to be touched by anyone without a training certificate and 3 layers of supervision. Kale asked how this involved him, and she told him the beacon had chosen him as a stabilizing anchor. He pointed out that he wasn't even authorized to stabilize a lunch tray, but she insisted the device had linked itself to his biosignature. To demonstrate, she held up a small metal sphere that pulsed with a soft blue glow. It beeped the instant Kale looked at it, which he found personally insulting. Lurath winced and admitted the device had been designed to interface with highly trained navigators from her world. Kale asked how it could possibly mistake him for one, and she explained the beacon had a somewhat optimistic scanning protocol. Kale said that was a generous way to describe a machine that had just volunteered him for cosmic consequences. Lurath agreed, noting that her people didn't build enough safety warnings into anything, which was why their starships often included instructions like, "Please avoid stepping into open singularities." Kale asked what exactly her mistake had started, and she told him the beacon was currently destabilizing gravitational corridors between their worlds, slowly turning reliable wormholes into unpredictable cosmic pretzels. Kale stared at her, then at the sphere, then at her twitching ears, which were now vibrating with dread. He suggested she simply turn it off, and she told him that if she could do that, she would not be standing in a maintenance bay hoping he knew more about cosmic physics than his job title suggested. Kale admitted that his experience with physics involved telling stubborn machines to behave. She said that was still more than they had. The lights flickered again, this time with a shudder that rattled a row of tool cabinets across the wall. The beacon beeped louder, its glow intensifying as if it were trying to remind him he was now part of its dramatic life choices. Kale demanded to know what would happen if they didn't fix the reaction soon. Lurath began listing consequences, but the first one, collapsing wormholes, was already more than Kale wanted to hear. He held up a hand and asked for solutions instead of disasters. She admitted she had none. Kale informed her that this was deeply unhelpful. She replied that she had been trained for diplomacy, not emergency beacon interpretation, and asked whether humans always complained this much during apocalyptic situations. Kale said he only complained when aliens assigned him cosmic responsibilities without asking. Her ears flicked, and she apologized again, her voice cracking in a way that made Kale realize she was genuinely terrified. He sighed, rubbed his face, and told her they would figure something out, mostly because neither of them had better options. She brightened slightly, though her ears were still trembling. Kale asked where they needed to go first, and she told him the beacon's core reaction could only be stabilized from her people's starship, currently orbiting the outer docking ring. Kale muttered that if this was a prank, it was impressively elaborate. The beacon beeped angrily, as if offended by the accusation. Kale grabbed his toolkit out of habit, then realized it contained absolutely nothing useful for repairing ancient alien technology. He took it anyway because it made him feel better. Lureth motioned for him to follow, her steps quick and jittery. As they hurried down the corridor, the station trembled again, and Kale asked whether this was normal. Lureth assured him it wasn't, then added that if the beacon continued escalating, the tremors would get worse. Kale said that was excellent news and thanked her for sharing. She offered a small, sheepish smile and promised she would make up for her mistake once they survived. Kale said he appreciated the optimism and hoped it wasn't as faulty as her beacon. Her ears twitched in embarrassment. They reached the docking lift, and as the doors closed behind them, Kale realized he had officially left behind the quiet life of fixing angry machines. He was now, through no fault of his own, the reluctant sidekick of a long-eared alien woman whose diplomatic misstep could unravel the cosmos. And somehow, the day still felt like an improvement over interacting with Gammadex supervisors. Kale felt the docking lift shudder as it rose toward the outer ring, the vibration reminding him uncomfortably of a washing unit that had once tried to spin itself into another dimension. Lureth stood beside him, hands clasped, ears flicking in restless arcs that suggested she expected the universe to collapse at any moment. Kale asked if her ears always did that or if it was a special feature reserved for cosmic emergencies. She tried to stop them, failed, and muttered that her ears had a strong emotional union contract. Kale nodded, impressed by anatomy that negotiated with itself. When the lift doors opened, they stepped into a narrow terminal leading to an observation tunnel. Beyond the glass walls, her ship floated like an elegant shard of comet ice, though Kale suspected it only looked peaceful from a distance. Lureth explained that the beacon's feedback loop was now affecting the starship's stabilizers. Kale asked how she knew. The ship immediately listed 10 degrees to the left with the melodramatic grace of someone fainting on purpose. Kale muttered that subtlety was clearly not part of her people's engineering philosophy. They entered the tunnel, and the artificial gravity fought a losing battle as another tremor rippled across the station. Kale flailed and caught himself on the wall, while Lureth remained perfectly stable, her boots humming with a magnetic field too polite to let her fall. Kale demanded to know why she hadn't offered him a pair. She apologized and said her people didn't stock human shoe sizes because humans had too many opinions about comfort. Kale couldn't argue. Her ship's airlock opened with a soft chime, followed by a voice announcing that unauthorized humans were statistically troublesome. Lureth assured Kale that the ship's AI was merely cautious. Kale pointed out that cautious sounded a lot like on the brink of ejecting him into space. The AI responded by dimming the lights dramatically. Lureth sighed and told it to behave, which somehow worked. Inside, the ship's corridors glowed with soft threads of bioluminescence that pulsed like breathing vines. Kale tried not to stare, but it was hard to ignore walls that appeared to inhale. Lureth guided him to the navigation chamber, where a holographic projection of the beacon hovered like a jittery ghost. Every pulse made the ship tremble, and Kale asked whether the hologram was supposed to look like it was panicking. Lureth admitted this was the high alert display. Kale asked what the low alert one looked like. She said it whistled. The hologram expanded to show multiple wormhole routes, each flickering between stable blue and agitated red. Kale reached out instinctively, forgetting it was a projection, and his hand passed through with a distortion that made his fingers tingle unpleasantly. Lureth winced and told him not to poke dimensional representations. Kale apologized, explaining that he was a human and therefore legally required to touch glowing things. Lureth pulled up another display showing the link between Kale's biosignature and the beacon. A pulsing line connected a silhouette of him to the unstable core. Kale observed that the silhouette looked nothing like him and had suspiciously heroic shoulders. Lureth coughed and admitted she adjusted the proportions so he wouldn't feel underrepresented next to her people's data models. Kale appreciated the gesture but asked whether flattering anatomy could help fix wormholes. Lureth said probably not. Their first task was to locate the exact harmonic mismatch causing the beacon to unravel. Lureth instructed Kale to stand on a circular platform that scanned his biofield. Kale agreed, though he questioned why the platform resembled a ceremonial sacrificial disc. Lureth assured him that sacrifices were last-century practices and that now they preferred collaborative risk-sharing. Kale said that sounded worse. The platform lit up, projecting his outline into the air. The beacon responded instantly, emitting a sharp tone that made both of them jump. The ship shook again, and a garbled alarm echoed through the chamber, warning them that gravity might invert briefly for fun. Kale shouted that he did not consent to experimental gravity. Lureth shouted back that she didn't either. They hurried through the holograms, adjusting parameters, and each failed attempt caused the ship to lurch harder. Kale joked that maybe the ship just wanted attention. Lureth admitted that her people's machines often developed dramatic personalities if ignored for too long. Kale suggested giving it a compliment. Lureth tried, telling the ship it looked particularly sleek today. The trembling paused for 2 seconds, which they took as a good sign. But then the beacon pulsed violently, and a red surge raced across the holographic map, showing wormholes collapsing like folding paper. Lureth gasped and scrambled to stabilize the projection, her ears flattening in panic. Kale steadied her shoulder, reminding her they were in this together whether he liked it or not. She nodded with watery determination and insisted they try one more approach, forcing a manual override by resyncing the beacon with her natural resonance and Kale's biofield simultaneously. Kale asked whether that was safe. She said no. Kale asked whether it would work. She said maybe. Kale sighed and said maybe was statistically the most encouraging thing he'd heard today. They stepped onto the platform together, her long ears brushing his shoulder as she angled herself toward the glowing sphere. The beacon reacted immediately, vibrating so hard the air around it hummed. Kale felt a strange pull, like something in the universe had grabbed his spine and was trying to read it. Lureth's voice trembled as she counted down, and the moment she reached 1, the resonance field burst outward in a wave of shimmering light. The ship shook violently, alarms wailed, and the holograms flickered as if they were being rewritten mid-existence. Kale felt his heartbeat synchronize with the beacon's pulse, then sharply break away. The light vanished, the shaking stopped, and the holographic map reappeared showing even worse instability. Kale stared at it. Lureth stared at it. The AI politely announced that they had made everything significantly more complicated. Kale told Lureth that this was officially the worst group project he had ever participated in, and the beacon pulsed again, as if agreeing. Kale stared at the chaotic map as though glaring hard enough might shame the wormholes into behaving, but the red spirals only widened, pulsing with the smugness of cosmic disasters that enjoyed their work. Lureth stood beside him, wringing her hands, her long ears drooping in miserable arcs. The AI suggested filing a formal apology with the universe, which Kale ignored on principle. Lureth whispered that this was all her fault, and Kale surprised himself by telling her she was allowed one monumental mistake per lifetime, provided she agreed not to press suspicious buttons ever again. Her ears twitched in a shaky laugh, and Kale felt something inside him soften, some reluctant acceptance that their hopeless situation was now very much shared. The holograms flickered, showing a ripple spreading from the beacon's core like a heartbeat out of sync with reality itself. Lureth pointed at a narrow blue thread weaving between collapsing roots, the original calibration path of the beacon, still unstable but intact. Kale asked why they hadn't tried using it before. Lureth muttered that it was labeled Forbidden Pathway, and she had assumed that meant it was dangerous. Kale argued that everything they had done so far had been dangerous, so at least this was honestly labeled. The AI warned them that the Forbidden Pathway was designed as a failsafe, requiring 2 living anchors, one with Lurath's resonance and one with Kale's biofield. Kale asked what happened if they messed it up. The AI replied, with concerning cheer, that the universe would probably fold itself into a shape mathematicians would describe as upsetting. Kale looked at Lurath and asked if she trusted him. She said she did, then quickly added that her people weren't good at lying, so he could take that as proof. He stepped onto the platform again, shoulders squared not with confidence but with the resigned determination of someone who had repaired enough machines to know that most problems required stubbornness more than brilliance. Lurath joined him, her hand hovering near his as though she feared the universe would yank one of them away if she let go. The beacon floated above them, flickering erratically. Lurath raised her voice, speaking in a soft harmonic tone that resonated through the chamber like a chant woven from starlight. Kale felt vibrations thrum through him as the beacon answered. His pulse matched its rhythm, not painfully this time but with a strange, cooperative patience, as if the device had finally realized they were trying to help it. The forbidden pathway opened in the hologram, a tight spiral of blue that pulsed in time with them. Lurath told Kale to follow her lead, and he joked that following her lead was what got them into this mess. Her ears flicked in exasperated amusement, and she told him to focus. The platform glowed, and a column of shimmering energy rose around them. Kale felt his thoughts stretch as though pulled into a wider space, his senses brushing against something vast and humming with gravitational power. He glimpsed brief images, wormholes trembling like taut strings, quantum fibers twisting, space folding and unfolding as though unsure where to settle. Through it all, Lurath's voice guided him, stabilizing the flow. Kale added pressure where she directed, using intuition and a stubborn refusal to let anything collapse under his watch. He told the universe to cooperate the same way he told misbehaving machinery to cooperate. Remarkably, something listened. The holographic chaos began to shrink. Red spirals dimmed into orange, then yellow, then the softer blue of stable roots. The ship steadied. The alarms quieted. The beacon's frantic vibration slowed into a gentle, steady pulse. Then the entire display flared white for a single breath, and the platform went still beneath them. Kale blinked, realizing the energy column had faded. The ship was no longer shaking. The holographic map had stabilized, showing the wormholes peacefully rotating again. Lurath's breath caught, her eyes wide with cautious hope. The AI announced, in disbelief, that the universe had failed to collapse today, and that someone should take notes on whatever Kale had just done. Kale said he mostly yelled internally until physics gave up arguing. Lurath laughed, a real, unburdened laugh, her ears lifting high with relief. They stepped off the platform, still dizzy, and Kale felt a strange lightness, not from the fading resonance but from the weight that had finally slid off his shoulders. He looked around the chamber, half expecting another alarm to blare, but everything remained calm. Lurath bowed her head toward him, a gesture her people reserved for profound gratitude. She told him she had never met anyone who could improvise with the cosmos as fearlessly as he had. Kale replied that fearlessness was just fear with bad handwriting. Her ears twitched in fond amusement. The AI announced that diplomatic authorities were requesting a full report, preferably one that did not include phrases like accidental universe destabilization. Kale told Lurath she could handle that since she was the diplomat. She sighed but agreed, on the condition that he stand beside her when she explained everything. He accepted, knowing that somehow through all the chaos she trusted him, and he astonishingly trusted her too. When they finally left the chamber, walking side by side through the softly glowing corridors, Kale realized he was no longer the man who simply repaired machines and hoped the universe ignored him. He had stood inside the heart of a cosmic disaster and refused to let it win. Lurath walked close enough that her long ears brushed his shoulder again, not in panic or accident, but in quiet companionship. As they stepped into the docking tunnel, Kale glanced back at the alien ship, now steady and calm. The universe for once was not falling apart, and he felt strangely ready, whatever came next.